Thanks for listening to Podcast 4. I'm Angela Benedict. His eyes don't hold pain like others I've seen. No long stare of emptiness. Depth here. They are solid despite all he has seen, or maybe because of it. These are warrior eyes. Warrior eyes, force, strength, duty of care, diet and mental health, homeless vets, and the 3 keys of recovery. Maybe it's where I come from, a place where there are 2 words, one for soldier and one for warrior. It has always been understood these are not the same. Some warriors soldier, but not all soldiers are warriors, yet they are expected to do what warriors are. Sometimes they break in the process. Warriors have a spiritual aspect that some talk about and some don't, but it will present itself in some way, demonstrated in their connection to nature, to martial arts and code, to being teachers and masters of the path, saying, "Come this way, I know this. I've walked it." It is the deep spirit of the warrior that knows something the scientists are now calling flow state. To be in true flow state is more than performing fluidly even difficult tasks. It is about being inside of something bigger than you, that you allow to carry you ever higher. It is the river you allow yourself to surrender to because you know that it knows more, can act more quickly, instinctively. Warriors understand flow. They understand that the flow is ever present, that change is constant, and that people come and go. Events take place and there is little control outside of ourselves, but it doesn't matter in the end. It was all part of the flow, part of all that is. It was all fluid. He was just part of the river. He does not fight the river. He is the river and part of all that is. Some will say he is overly detached, that he doesn't feel or care because he doesn't express the same way they do, or worry, or seem to even be aware of the same things that concern them. They aren't in the flow. He doesn't try to explain. They think he is detached. He is part of all that is, all that has ever been, because warrior has always been across time. He has a warrior's eyes. That is his soul. If you have also seen eyes like that, you know that they are intimidating, intense, and belong to someone who is often feared and often misunderstood. They care deeply, not superficially. They are demanding and often hard on people around them. Often they live alone. They figure it is easier on everyone. It's interesting to me how many times I hear from military men this: if it were up to me, I would have a room, a cot, my stuff, and that would be limited. A simple life. But there is a social expectation to get married, to have X number of kids, a mortgage, and what other people consider to be a normal life. Often this normal life is not a warrior's preference, or possibly even what they can do. Is not like other people. It's not an easy path. A mortar round falls several hundred yards away, but the energy blast and terror it strikes impacts a soldier profoundly, and the effects of traumatic stress begin to take root. Another soldier spends hours in a firefight, directly involved in the dance of death, listening to bullets whiz and crack beside him in a seemingly endless barrage. He walks out of the fight, alive, well, grinning. No sign of acute or delayed onset traumatic stress ever grips him. What's the difference? Everything is perception. Successfully dealing with trauma has to do more with how we assign meaning to the event than to the event itself. What else factors heavily is our belief in our own ability to overcome, our mindset, and level of self-worth prior to the event. Our self-confidence before the event takes place will determine a lot in how we recover after. Each of us has a backstory. Each of us has a system of filters Each of us perceives our world through layers of understanding that we have built up over our lives based on information from others about how the world works, our place in it, and from that we determine our identity in relation to everything and everyone else. This is a unique perception. This explains why two people can be participants in the same event and experience it differently. Often I am asked, what is the number one issue in combat stress? I always say politics. But after that, I say it is an expectation that there is one thing. There are many aspects because each person is perceiving through his or her own lens. Force strength. Currently, the U.S. military is down to personnel levels that are lower than before World War II. This is expected to drop further as cuts are made over 2016. This means personnel will continue to have to do more with less. It also means that training budgets will be slashed, along with many other things. Force strength is not only about how many troops are available to be deployed, it is about the health of those personnel. 100% of all deployed personnel will experience some form of combat stress. 35% will have serious levels, including PTSD. One active duty personnel suicides every 25 hours, according to DoD stats. Suicides are a tip of the iceberg issue. I have always been more concerned with what is going on under the waterline. Once people go black, in triage terms, there's nothing we can do for them. They are gone. Red is the next to get attention, and they do as long as they are admitting their status and seeking out help or being triaged by someone who can tell that they're red. Below the waterline are orange. This group is chronically overlooked, and very little, if any, intervention is made until they go red. Yellow is assumed to be like green. If we inverted the iceberg and stood the organization on its tip, the greens are holding up everyone else while under the stress of budget cuts and going without what they need to do their jobs. Now granted, there has been massive misallocation of money across branches, including reserves and National Guard, for a very long time, and money has been spent on stupid things. This needs to be reined in. The amount of money spent on the Yellow Ribbon program, as an example, for all of the results they get from it, is a staggering amount of money with little return. Resiliency programming, SHARP, MRT, and many other pieces of programming can be argued to be marginally successful at best. It never fails to make me cringe to hear that National Guard, as an example, are allotted 60 bullets per year. No range time, and a handful of bullets. So when tactical level training isn't treated as important, resiliency programming can easily go by the wayside. There are so many full-time mental health practitioners working within the military and so much open source information that is critical to recovery. There is no reason why the military is in the state that it's in, other than incompetence, misallocations, and individual personnel not taking their health seriously and preemptively doing what is required to remain healthy and operationally effective. Let's look at some numbers. 43,000 active duty soldiers are non-deployable for various reasons. 20,000, so 36% annually of each intake, do not complete their first term of enlistment. 78,000 active duty soldiers are considered clinically obese and are 36 to 86% less likely to be medically ready to deploy. 1 in 20 active duty soldiers annually fail the annual physical fitness test, and they are 279% less likely to be medically ready to deploy. 180,000 active duty soldiers have at least one musculoskeletal injury per year, resulting in over 10 million limited duty days. MSKIs, or musculoskeletal injuries, account for 76% of the medical non-deployed population. Under 7 hours of sleep for more than 3 days correlates to a 20% decrease in cognitive ability, so that's memory and decision making. 1 in 20 active duty soldiers are prescribed sleep medications, and these soldiers are 16% less likely to be medically ready to deploy. Where am I getting this information from? The Performance Triad Leader's Guide of the Comprehensive Soldier Fitness Program of the U.S. military. $3 billion annually spent in salary costs for soldiers who cannot deploy. $1 billion annually to replace soldiers that fail to complete their first term of enlistment. So there's a recruiting problem. $173 million in the fiscal year of 2013 was spent to replace 1,800 soldiers discharged due to failure to maintain body composition standards. Did we understand that? $137 million to replace 1,800 fat soldiers. When 78,000 are clinically obese but just haven't been medicaled out yet, that's about $76,000 per fat soldier. $1.1 billion spent annually to treat medical conditions associated with obesity. $350 million annually in salary costs for the 41% of the soldiers who will actually be discharged for MSKIs. $5 million in costs for lost duty days from injuries and accidents associated with fatigue. $47 million spent each year on the top 5 medications prescribed for sleep disorders. Over $1 billion spent each year. $1 billion worth of taxpayers' money to treat medical conditions of military personnel who are obese. Doesn't that kind of not fit with the image of what a military fighting machine should look like? Obese. How do you correct most health issues? Diet and exercise. But primarily diet, and I say that because there are direct links between diet and depression, diet and insomnia, diet and neurodegeneration, diet and anxiety, diet and the overall function of our bodies. The 3-letter acronym for the standard American diet is SAD for a reason. Let's go back to force strength. So at the end of this year, there are to be 475,000 regular force serving U.S. military personnel. Due to the medical issues above, approximately 200,000 of that number will be non-deployable. That number does not include PTSD, or those who may have some form of combat stress and aren't saying. So of the remaining almost 200,000, who is green, who is yellow, who is orange, who is above the waterline? The total military number of about 980,000 will include reserve components, which are planned to also be cut. And reservists, of course, get the least amount of care and training to begin with, if any, so the same problems live there with even fewer resources. Force strength is not being presented as an accurate picture of the status of the military. It has been dubbed for years now the most medicated army in history. It is not in a strong position. Almost half of its personnel are fat and tired, are costing millions of dollars per year. Diet and some lifestyle changes would fix both of these issues. It's not that someone has lost a limb and can't deploy. They're too fat to deploy. This is preposterous and totally preventable. Duty of care. What is it really? It is a modern concept, but how is it being applied to the current crises the military is in? There is a due diligence attitude in that as long as a program is available, it doesn't have to actually show results. Again, the Yellow Ribbon program of the National Guard is a great example. Imagine showing up for a weekend with your family because your presence and theirs is mandatory. You sign in Friday afternoon. Your weekend venue is one of the casinos in Atlantic City. You go Saturday morning to hear the same thing you were told every time there is a yellow ribbon, your education and employment support information and mental health crises lines and information that could have been put in a booklet and mailed to you. They go over it again. Whoever photocopied the information got it crooked on the page. By Saturday afternoon, you and the family are at the slots. No one goes on Sunday. The military pays for your accommodations, food for the weekend, for your family to stay in one of the casino hotels. This costs millions of dollars per year. And what is the return? I have never heard anyone say they like going to the Yellow Ribbon program. Regardless of what state they're from, I hear the same response. There will be an animal-like sound, followed by moaning, followed by some summarizing statement like, I'd rather gnaw through my right arm than go to another yellow ribbon. This is just one bad example, but there are others. Duty of care is the responsibility or the legal obligation of a person or organization to avoid acts or omissions, which can be reasonably foreseen, to be likely to cause harm to others. If you go to the doctor when you are sick, and the doctor knows information that will make you better, but doesn't tell you, and you get worse and or die, the doctor is liable, legally liable for that omission. The military has access to incredible amounts of information and research, open source and its own. There is zero reason why it should be in the shape that it's in, and I would argue it has opened itself up to legal civil suits because of what it should have known and supplied to its members but didn't. Diet and mental health. Schizophrenia used to be called bread madness. Since World War II, we have known of the connection between mental illness and diet. During the rations and food shortages after the war, doctors noticed that their patients, specifically who had schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, did not have symptoms when there was no bread in their diets. When the shortages were over and bread was available and consumed in their diets again, symptoms returned. Now we are understanding much more clearly the role that diet plays because we are getting clear that food isn't just fuel. It is a medium by which we complete chemical processes in the body. These chemical processes either are completed successfully or not. There is no close enough. Every cell in the body is covered in receptors that can be broken off by sharp glucose molecules and covered in hard fats when we eat hydrogenized oils. No receptors means processes aren't completed and cells don't get what they need. We don't function properly. What is glucose? Sugar. We only need 120 grams of sugar per day. Anything above that is excessive. When we have excess sugar molecules, our pancreas creates more insulin. Why? Because insulin is a transporter molecule. It takes glucose to every cell that needs it. Hopefully the receptors on the cell are okay and the transfer is completed. When the cells don't need the glucose, and we don't need much, there is nowhere for the insulin to take the extra. The pancreas releases more because when it realizes there is a problem, it has limited options, none or more. First it tries more. We eat more sugar, insulin has nowhere to put it. Glucose causes damage to cells and inflammation is caused. As soon as inflammation is present, the immune system comes online. Why is there a problem? If enough inflammation is present, soon the endocrine system comes online and starts releasing adrenaline and cortisol. Excessive insulin will also release cortisol. Cortisol is a beast that does damage to our cells in high amounts. We cannot afford large amounts of cortisol to be released. Cortisol will always first shut down the immune system. Now our defense system is down. It is easy for us to create a vicious cycle inside our bodies. Gluten creates havoc in the stomach. It is found in lots of food products as a binding additive, like in bread and naturally in grains. Gluten is glue, and it smears flat the microvilli in the stomach, which is supposed to direct the flow of molecules through the stomach to the intestine. If they aren't working, the immune system will send out special forces units called T cells to intervene. These cells will engage the gluten cells, and in the process, leave big holes in the walls of the stomach, trying to get the glue off. Now you have leaky gut, where molecules that shouldn't be getting into the bloodstream now can. More inflammation, more infection, more T cells who leave more holes in things. This should be starting to give you a picture of just how easy it is to mess ourselves up by simply eating the wrong food. If there was an organization who should be adamantly demanding of their personnel to get their diet right, for the sake of international and national security, it should be the military. Not so. 78,000 every year medically obese? Very not so. Homeless vets and the 3 keys of recovery. This is also a serious issue in the current veterans crises. Homeless vets will be especially vulnerable to poor diet and its effects. So the correlations to depression, to anxiety, to blood sugar-driven insomnia, on top of their situational-based stresses and possible PTSD and other mental health issues, makes this another vicious circle that has to be broken. The likelihood of it being broken is not good, however. Getting vets indoors is job 1. Getting them eating proper diets is critical. The 3 keys of recovery are security, safety, and healing. You can't jump stages. Security means basic needs are being met, and for many vets, this is not happening. Many of their health-related, including mental health issues, will not be resolved until their basic needs are covered and they get out of survival mode. The food you eat can either be the safest and most powerful form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. It is no accident that the first 4 letters of health are heal. In order to get to the 3rd key of recovery, you must regain your health. Till next time, stay safe, be well. Peace out.